Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rock and Radio's live football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Josh Matejka. This is Before the Box Score, your post-Tennessee domination victory show. That's where we're at. 36-7. 36-7. The fewest amount of points a Josh Heupel offense has scored since he's been a head coach. A complete reversal of the 60 burgers that they put up on Missouri the past couple of years. Josh, greatest win ever? No. Great win, right? Great win.
We were having a conversation on the Rock M Slack post game. Is this the most complete effort that a Mizzou team has put forward in, you could go back as far as you want, but like in the last 30 years of Mizzou football, is this most the complete effort? And it was like, well, the 2007 Arkansas game, Kansas State, I believe in 2008 or 9, there's a lot of things you can point to. I think to say that it's the best game of the last 25 years is going a little too far. I think there's a pretty good case that it's the best win of the Drinkwitz era, by a sizable margin, and not like the best win, like it meant the most to the program, but in terms of who are you playing? How did you play? What is the context being brought into it? I do think it's the most complete performance of Drinkwitz's time as the Mizzou head coach for sure.
Yeah. You had a couple of those you could point to with Gary Pinkel. You listed a couple of them there. Barry Odom's will and always will forever be the Florida game in 2018. Came out of nowhere and just shellacked Dan Mullen in his first year in Gainesville. And yeah, I think this one enters the pantheon of, most impressive victories for a coaching regime. And, this is the second ranked victory that Missouri has had at home. That's the first time it's happened since 1976. I was not alive then. Most of us were not alive then. That is impressive. And, it's Tennessee. Tennessee, the team that's had your number for 4 years, the team that ran up the score the past 2 years. There is no love lost between Coach Heupel and Coach Drinkwitz. And, we could talk about Cody, we could talk about the defense, we could talk about all the individual players. But the most fun thing coming out of that game was, the what's the PC version? The little nagging, poking kind of antagonistic Eli Drinkwitz, the shenanigans. When he called, Heupel decided, well, I'm going to put up a field goal, I'm going to get to double digits in my points. And Eli Drinkwitz says, I'm going to ice your kicker because it matters.
5 seconds left. Yeah. And it was the second timeout he had called within the last minute. Cause I remember as the clock was winding down, they called a timeout at 40 seconds and the announcers were like, oh, I guess we're playing this game now. And then we cut to a commercial break and I was like, oh, I got to write the takeaways and get them out. Come on, man.
Yeah. It's this is the environment where Eli Drinkwitz shenanigans are fun and cheeky. Mm-hmm. They're not fun and cheeky when he's losing 7 games a year. So this is good.
Yeah. Speaking of cheeky, because this is Dad Pod, although I guess every pod is now Dad Pod with BK, right. But I did want to bring this up. We've been on record that this is a pro Bluey podcast, and I was watching a Bluey episode yesterday morning about when they're playing Pass the Parcel and Bingo is learning how to be a good loser. And you see, as she continues losing the game throughout the episode, she gets better at losing. She has a better attitude. Tennessee has not learned how to be good losers. And Missouri was really giving it to him the entire game. You could see every time Darius Robinson was in the backfield, he was letting Joe Milton have it. But by the end of the game, it was so chippy out there. It didn't come to blows or anything like that. I think they're a disciplined enough team where it didn't do that. But it was really fun to watch Mizzou chirp Tennessee the entire time, and there's absolutely nothing they could do about it. They just had to take it.
I would love to know what Darius Robinson was telling Joe Milton. To my knowledge, those two have no overlap anywhere. Darius is from Detroit, and then, Joe grew up in Florida. So other than just playing against each other, maybe this comes from last year, again, going back to the aggression. Maybe that's part of it. But yeah, you saw it almost came to fisticuffs when Brady Cook took the knee and that gigantic Elijah Simmons, all 350 pounds of him, starts barreling through the offensive line as Brady Cook takes a knee and kind of knocks him off kilter there. I thought there was going to be a fight, frankly, at that point. That was, that is a type of move that is done completely out of frustration. There's nothing to be gained there. You're not going to force a fumble and magically score a 28-point, touchdown. Like, that's not going to happen. This is just, I'm mad and I'm going to let you know about it. But yeah, credit to both staffs for running the heck out there and pushing them all away. But yeah, cheeky and fun, and Tennessee doesn't know how to lose. I think that's true for their fans, and it's certainly true for their players. Did you see the post-game handshake?
I think I was watching all of the other reactions, and I saw them approaching each other. It seemed like it happened really quick. It was just like a curt nod, but I might have missed something.
So, I mean, you didn't miss anything. We don't need a Zapruder film it, but Eli's like basically herding his team away.
Yeah.
And Josh had come out and he kind of points and kind of like, hey, there you are. Eli runs over, doesn't even get the full hug, just kind of like the bro hug, barely just a tap. And then he runs off and gives, one of his players a hug and daps up one of the assistants on the Tennessee staff. Like, no interest in a conversation, no interest in discussing what happened there. And I don't blame him. The last handshake from 2022, I know Josh tried to explain that, hey, I was trying to get my backups some reps. And Eli was just like, all right, and just walked away. So, I don't think they're on each other's Christmas card list, frankly. They might sit next to each other at SEC Media Days, but like, it's fun. It's fun to have a rival that's not like actually fighting you, but that you can like verbally spar with, or at least enjoy not liking. And for a long time, that's not been really the case because, again, Tennessee's had Missouri's number, but it's fun to get back and push back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we at Rock M are the pinnacles of college football journalism, I think. And one of the things you learn at the Mizzou School of Journalism is you have to recognize your biases. And if I'm going to do that, I have to be objective and say, I also don't think that Eli Drinkwitz is a very good loser. I think he's a pretty sore loser when it comes to it. Fortunately, he hasn't been able to do it much this year, but I definitely think he enjoys. I mean, we've seen it in the past with stuff with Dan Mullen. He really enjoys kind of stewing over past wrongs that were done to him and kind of getting on the upper hand of those and taking advantage of them. So it's not really a surprise that he would hold that grudge, I don't think.
No. We got unfiltered Eli Drinkwitz. He said the naughty word of butt on live TV, which was great. We got a whisk for Brady Cook to stir it up. We had Cody Schrader get into those stands and start, pounding his chest and screaming and got lifted off the field. Like, so many fun things came out of this, and it just continues to come out of this. And so, that's part of the fun of college sports. It's all about moments. BK and I talked about the moment against Georgia and how that was lost. This was a moment that you're going to remember. You're going to remember the short little white kid who who had 300 combined yards running and catching. You're going to remember toppling a number 13 team and holding them to 7 points. You're going to remember winning. Yeah, exactly. You're going to be Tennessee State champs. You've beaten Middle Tennessee, Memphis, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee in the same year. First time that has ever happened in the history of college football. There are so many things you can take away from this game. But for me, I think it's going to be Cody Schrader, at least from on the field stuff.
Well, yeah.
Because again, you don't see that. And you certainly don't see that from unranked D2 transfer walk-ons who started their career as the 6th best running back at the beginning of 2022 and now lead the SEC in rushing. Like, the storybook is getting sent back to the editor because, like, this is not believable, but this is also where we're at.
Yeah, I think back to something that you and BK said earlier in the year. I can't remember which game it was after. It was before the Georgia game, but one of you mentioned that, and I'm speaking personally too here, a lot of the way that we at Rock M have approached Cody Schrader and our analysis of him, especially last year, especially moving into this year, was, he's a good guy to have in the room. He does a job, but the amount that Drinkwitz was leaning on him was not. You basically weren't priming the pump for success moving into the future. And I think, especially as he's grown into the year, it's pretty obvious that he's not just like begrudgingly, he plays a role. No, he's a strength of this offense. And really, when he's playing well, the rest of the team plays well. And you see it when he's not out there. Like Nate Pete's touches have gotten significantly less throughout the year, but when he's on the field, it just feels off. He's not having those good standard downs. Mizzou's not able to move the ball as well through the air because he's not the run blocker that Cody Schrader has developed himself into a really key cog on this offense that is missing. And I think what makes it more impressive too is he was playing at such a level when he was hurt. And I don't think anybody thought that he could get to this level, but when he kind of took care of that hamstring through the bye week, he's really taken a step up. I mean, he was already playing at such a high level. He was already leading the conference in rushing. And even after last night, he's opened up I would guess maybe an insurmountable lead on the SEC rushing.
195 yards.
He's got over 200 yards, or about 200 yards on Ray Davis. I mean, Arkansas and Florida are not gonna be like brick walls for him to run into. He's got a really, really good shot at leading the SEC in rushing. And I wrote this in the takeaways last night, potentially being a first or second team all SEC selection. Who would have thought that at the beginning of last year? That's crazy.
Well, certainly not me. I have admitted that through most of last year and parts of this year, like the first couple of games this year, I was like, we should see what else we can do past Cody Schrader. Nothing against him. Like, if he is your starter, that's good. He's like a replacement level running back, but I figured that's all he was ever going to be. And I figured the other guys on the roster were going to bring something or have a higher ceiling than that. I was wrong. I was definitely wrong. And that's 100% credit to Cody Schrader working his butt off and becoming, like you said, becoming the guy that this team needed. I put on Twitter last night that Cody Schrader had finally finished his transformation into Tyler Beatty, because he added the receiving threat that Tyler added through the air on top of everything else. And you could argue that maybe they're two different styles of player, but I think the sentiment is the same, because Tyler was overlooked coming onto this team when he was a freshman, and he got starting time as a freshman. He had the key pass against Purdue and that win in 2018. Like, he's just a grinder, and Cody is that too. He just lacked some of the refinement in the passing game, and now he's got that. He's shown that he can do that.
Yeah,
at least against a Tennessee team that overlooks him in the passing game, but still.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we went on air. Is if you looked at the way that Tennessee was setting up, I think especially at the beginning of the game, they were really trying to take away some of Mizzou's threats on the outside and take away the deep ball. So Brady Cook was doing, outside of that one throw that was intercepted, and I think you could quibble a little bit, it was tipped and Burden didn't run the best route. But regardless, Cook was having to check down a lot. And Schrader, credit to him, was available a lot of times. And really, I think the most impressive thing for me is he's added that, maybe if not top end speed, like some really high end speed to his game. I've never thought about him as a really explosive player, but he was taking really good angles and outrunning these like really good defenders. Tennessee's got a good defense, and he was just outstripping them pretty easily in those big gains and those chunk yardage that he was picking up. I think it really makes you think about how much he probably worked in the offseason to add that element to his game. He's always been a strong runner, right? But the fact that he is now able to add that speed, that explosiveness, where when he hits the hole, he's taking off. He's not waiting for someone to come in and at least put a hand on him. He's actually getting yards before someone can make contact with him. And he's been durable. He's really the full package for a running back right now, which is I don't think any of us expected seeing a full season out of him last year.
No. He's got burst. Like, he's going to get caught in the open field almost every single time.
But a lot of running backs do.
That happens, especially in the SEC. He's almost like, when you ever played pickup at the rec center, and like there's like a 60-year-old philosophy professor with elbow and knee pads and like a headband, and you're like, okay. And then he just like drop steps you into hell and like puts up 20 points because he's just like, he'll ball fake it or like just give you the Euro step. And you're like, I should be better than you. And you're like, yeah, but I'm smarter than you. I'm more experienced. That's kind of Cody's game. Like, I've seen this before. That's every time he takes the ball. I see what you're doing, and I'm not going to do anything flashy. I'm just going to take the right angle. I'm going to make the right step. If I take contact, I'm going to get lower. I'm going to keep driving. Just little things, winning on the margins, the little things. This is the stuff that experienced players do that can overcome any kind of talent deficiency that you're operating in. And yeah, oh, by the way, Cody Schrader is also pretty good. I think this is true. Yep. Yes. So Cody on 5 catches was the leading receiver of the game. No other person who caught the ball either on Tennessee or Missouri had more than 57 yards other than him, and he had 116. And then, of course, he had 205 yards on the ground, and Tennessee as a team put together 77 yards on the ground. So he was the leader for either team in both facets. I'm sure if he took snaps at quarterback, he probably would have thrown for 300 yards. I don't know. But he was it. And this was the Cody Schrader game. 2023 Tennessee will forever be the Cody Schrader game based off of what he did and how he just took over the game. And even though everyone knew what he was going to do and everyone knew he was going to get the ball, he still won. And that was incredible.
Yeah, there's not really, I mean, there are comparisons that you can make, and they were making them on air when they were doing the color commentary, but I mean, he's the first Mizzou running back to have that type of game since Devin West, I believe. And I mean, they were throwing the numbers out. He's one of 5 guys to have 200 receiving yards or 200 rushing yards, 100 receiving yards. I mean, the guys on that list, Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey, Devin Neal did it last year. The last name escapes me. But
Slayton.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he's the first player in SEC history to do it. I mean, in terms of, like you mentioned, guys that the ball is coming to them and you just can't stop them. Probably the last time we've seen a non-quarterback do that to a team. I mean, I think there were slices of time when Luther Burden was doing stuff like that earlier this year, but it's probably like like Denario Alexander or I can't think of anyone else like where you're just like, this guy's gonna beat you and you know it, and he's not. You can't do anything about it. So I think what Cody Schrader did against Tennessee is. When we think about moments and we think back at the season, which hopefully ends up 10-2, 11-2, I mean, Tennessee Cody Schrader game is going to be a top 5 moment because that's not going to happen very often, if ever again in the next 30, 40 years. So I'm really glad we got to see it.
Yeah. I mean, even think about running backs. I mean, Devin West was supremely talented on a bad team or a middling team at best when they were going bowling. But he was kind of the face of that rebuild that Larry Smith was trying to do and just get him out of the gutter, let alone compete. And then Gary Pinkel took it from there. But like, think about running backs. Like even Henry Josie. Henry Josie was an excellent running back. He didn't have like a ton of that dude sort of moments or those games. Like he had runs like against Texas A&M, against Oklahoma State, but he never felt like he had a complete game where he just took the thing over. Marcus Murphy as a returner, sure. Yeah. Like, wow, that dude was just lightning in a bottle. But as a running back, he was opportunistic and he was fast. If you go back and look at like single season rushing records, number 1 is Tyler Beatty, which I would think that he had several games where he was just like, okay, Tyler got 200. Holy crap. Like, think back to Central Michigan, like the coming out party for him in this very first game. And we're like, oh my God, are we going to lose? Are we going to lose to Central Michigan? And then Tyler's like, no, because I'm going to put up 250 yards. He had a couple of moments, and I don't know how well you remember that. Brad Smith is 3rd on this list with single season rushing yards. There was always a Brad Smith game, but again, quarterback, he makes that impact, especially in the modern game. You have to go back to like Joe Moore in 1969, who had 1,312 yards. I don't know Joe Moore's moments because, again, my parents weren't even alive at that point. Well, they probably were. Larry Roundtree, he had his flashes, but the 2020 season was just weird, odd. You remember some of them, like against Arkansas, but like not the particulars. And then like Henry Josie in 11 and 13, Zach Abron in 03, and then Darrell Wallace in 1985. Like you struggle to think of like games that they took over, but Cody Schrader is probably going to finish this year top 10 in single season rushing yards. And yeah, this is the moment that we point to because he just he was unstoppable, and it was beautiful to watch.
Yeah, in terms of the best, and this is like really debatable, you could go on all day, but in terms of like the best story, the best pure narrative for a Mizzou player in the last 10, 20 years, I would have a hard time thinking about someone who's got Cody Schrader on that. Coming from, he's a St. Louis kid, and some of this stuff is massaged, but all the sound bites coming out, all I ever wanted to be was a Mizzou player. Goes to Truman State, lights it up for 4 years, comes onto Mizzou's roster, sight unseen, and then becomes one of the best running backs in the SEC. That you mentioned there being like a storybook that like you're sending it back to the editor because it's not believable. But in terms of like pure narrative impact, I don't know that we're going to have another story like that at Mizzou. Maybe in our lifetimes. It's pretty special to watch. It's made this season, which has already been pretty special, feel that little you like connect with the team a little bit more because it's just a cool story. That's what's made this team so likable. And it's not just Cody Schrader. It's guys like Luther Burden. It's guys like Brady Cook. This team has so many storied players on it.
And local storied players too.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And to have that as a part of the team that's already good is it's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to enjoying it for the rest of however long it lasts.
The closest I can come to is Charles Harris, basketball player. Right? When he was unranked when he committed, and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess he's a 2-star." But like even insiders who like follow Mizzou recruiting for their job, like, we have no idea who this guy is. And then he, starts seeing snaps in 14, kind of rotational stuff. And then boom, he has the breakout. And then he's a first-round draft pick. So that's the closest I can get to local overlooked kid, with a story, does good. We don't know how Cody Schrader's story is. I don't know if he's going to get drafted. I can guarantee he's not going to get drafted first round, but like, I don't know where this goes. And maybe you could argue Charles Harris had a little bit more pedigree than Cody coming out, especially because he got to go straight to Mizzou. He didn't have to take the detour to Truman State, whatever. Point is, this is such a rare combination of against the world qualities that he has going for him. And it's great.
We're about 25 minutes into this, and this is a conversation that probably deserves its own podcast, but Cody Schrader's NFL prospects, I don't know how I feel about them at this point. There are things that would make me think that an NFL team would be a little more hesitant to take a chance on him. But at this point, I'm not writing him off. I have done my fair share of Cody Schrader doubting. Yeah. I think that has earned me the privilege of being able to sit back, shut up, and enjoy watching him play. So I'm just going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, if Bill Belichick doesn't get fired, I'm assuming he's going to want to at least give Cody Schrader a shot. But yeah, I have no idea. So yeah, Cody Schrader is the man of the hour, of the day, of the week, and deservedly so. The Burlsworth Trophy is awarded to the nation's top player who started off as a walk-on. He's obviously a contender for that. People are throwing around Heisman. No, running backs don't win the Heisman. They're not eligible anymore. Remember? But like, I don't know if you want to talk about the Doak Walker. I don't know. We can get pie in the sky about what he could be or not, or could be eligible for. I'd say if this dude makes first team all SEC, oh my God, that is enough. That is enough. That is more than enough. And I'm not saying that for him. He obviously has his own goals and dreams and stuff like that. But for me, and for the completion of the story arc of Cody Schrader, that'd be incredible. So we will see. There's still things to be written, and we got a couple more games to go. The other thing about this game was the defense, because again, that has been the problem with Tennessee. Missouri had its share of 50-17 blowouts of Tennessee, and then Tennessee turned around and started, putting up 60 burgers on us. You can go back to, pick your favorite, right? When Steve Wilkes, when he's like, well, we're going to do a 3-3-5 stack, something that we've never done before. None of these players have done before, but we're going to do it against Tennessee, and then gave up 60. or last year when Blake Baker was like, well, we're not going to let him get past us. Played really close, played really tight man, and then gave up 66. That has always been the problem. Missouri has scored, but has just never been able to keep up. And wow, I mean, you heard the narrative on the game if you watched the game live. They talked about it incessantly about how Blake Baker was changing things up. But Josh, I mean, this is a defensive performance that wasn't flashy, but man, it was good, and it held Josh Heupel to 7 points.
Yeah, the least amount of points that a Tennessee team has scored under Josh Heupel. And I mean, I think part of that is you can, if you want to be the naysayer, you can be like, well, Josh Heupel's teams are a little different this year. I mean, they still go fast. They're still pretty explosive. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. You noticed pretty early on that we had that 3-man front, which is not very common what we've seen this year. And they were mentioning how they talked to Baker after the Georgia game. They're like, what kind of went wrong? He's like, well, I think we were being too aggressive. And I do think that the narrative was pretty straightforward about Tennessee. Like, stop them in the run game, keep them under. I think the only other 2 games that they lost, they'd been held under 200 yards rushing. If you can do that, you can beat Tennessee. I do want to point out this is the least amount of rushing yards that the Tennessee team has had this year. I think they had 83 total. I should have the numbers in front of me, but I don't. I was looking them up last night. And there definitely seemed, the name of the game last night seemed to be control, right? If we can control where we're making Joe Milton go, then we can have a pretty good handle on this game, right? And I think it's worth pointing out too that Tennessee scored 7. The 7 points that they did get were on a bomb of a throw by Milton and a great catch. As soon as the Thornton Jr., I believe is the receiver's name, he came down. It was his only catch of the game because he got hurt doing the catch. I remember seeing it and being like, oh no, there's no way he got his hand under that. But credit to him, it was a great reception. I thought the coverage was good, but he just got under it and made an awesome play. First quarter, that's the only points they got. I was really impressed by the way that they stayed disciplined. Like the linebackers, as they would drop back, I mean, there were several times where Milton, when he saw that the play wasn't going to happen, he would scramble and immediately 2 guys were on him from the linebacking core. And they did it without Tyron Hopper too. It was just, it was such a non-Blake Baker performance, which I think makes it even more impressive because they were able to adapt within the week so quickly. I can't imagine that this is something that they work on a ton. It sounds like a lot of the changes were predicated on the fact that they got burned at Georgia. But I mean, controlling the Tennessee ground game like that and really dominating them at the line, which is something I want to talk about, is really impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So modern defense is not, oh, well, we run this and only this. Like that's just not how it works. You do a little bit of everything. So you can say that Blake Baker's base defense is a 4-2-5, 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. You can say that, but they kind of do everything and they kind of rotate around. But in this game, it was 3 down linemen. And the benefit of having Darius Robinson as a defensive end is that he is a tackle by nature. So you can have that bigger dude on the edge. Darius Robinson played on the outside almost the entire time. They rotated Realis George and Jaden Jernigan on the inside, just kind of cycled them out. I saw Josh Landry on the outside. I saw Christian Williams on the outside. Like big dudes, tackles who usually play inside were on the outside. They just beefed up the 3 guys on the front. They had their 3rd and 4th linebackers because all the other 2 were dead. And then you just rotated your defensive backs and you just played this shell. And Blake likes to play a lot of man. That's kind of what happens when you do a lot of blitzing. It's like you got to have to man up on everything else and hope your safeties can clean up in the back. And yeah, the 3-man front, Darius Robinson, Jaden Jernigan, Christian Williams, and their rotation, just that was enough to just completely fold in the Tennessee ground game, and they had to throw it. And that's what you want from Joe Milton because he is so inaccurate and he takes risky throws. And I went on to ESPN affiliate in Chattanooga, and they said, how does this defense want to win? I'm like, they want Joe Milton to throw. They're going to do everything they can to get him to throw, and that's what they did. The craziest thing to me is that we talk about scoring opportunities, or at least I do when I do my previews. You have to create opportunities, so you got to cross the 40-yard line. And when you do that, you need to come away with some points. So create opportunities, maximize the points per opportunity. Josh, do you want to take a guess at how many scoring opportunities Tennessee had yesterday? Just take a guess.
I want to
Defined by
say
crossing the 40.
Crossing the 40. Well, the touchdown doesn't count because that was a 46-yarder. They missed the field goal at the end.
Yep.
I'm trying to think back. I want to say they maybe had 2, 3. I'll say 3.
You got it correct. It is 3 exactly. The big pass, that is a scoring opportunity because guess what? They scored.
Mm-hmm.
They did not cross the Missouri 40 until the 2-minute mark of the third quarter. That was the first time they crossed the 40. And they had a punt because they got on the 36. There was a false start, then incomplete, then a completed pass, then a holding, 2 holds by Squirrel White and Jacob Warren. And then Jalen Wright dropped a pass, and then they had to punt. That was the first time they crossed the 40. And then after that, it was the last drive where the field goal and the icing the kicker and all those shenanigans happened. So this offense, which again, not the same as last year, more ground base, but still very, very good. A top 20 offense in the country. Crossed the Missouri 40 twice. And they didn't really do it until 2 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yeah, I think the thing that you mentioned the holding. There was something, I think the picture that comes to my mind is the moment when there was that review about whether whether there was the illegal forward pass where he had crossed the line of scrimmage before throwing it. To me, the biggest takeaway from that was not necessarily if he had crossed it, but if you look as he's throwing it, the replay was really funny because Cade Mays has Christian Williams' horse collar like all the way over here, and Christian Williams' soul is being yanked out of his body.
Yep.
And to me, if you watched the line play, you talk about beefing up those 3 men and then just like collapsing the run game. It was like that all night. Tennessee's offensive line was just like, it might have been a bunch of individual performances. I think part of it was the way that they schemed it, but they were like really trying to stop the entire pocket from caving in all night. Lots of holds, lots of like scrambles to like just push a guy outside so Milroe would have somewhere to go. It was a really impressive performance by the defensive line. And while I do think that Darius Robinson is like the totem for the line, I was really impressed by how a lot of those rotational guys came in and did their jobs, right? When you're talking about a Baker defense creating so much havoc, those guys aren't the guys you think of. And last night they weren't asked to do that. It was just like, do your role here so that Milroe can do this, like he can improvise, and then the rest of our defense can clean up, which I think they did a really good job of. And I mean, sometimes you need a little bit of turnover luck. I don't remember which of the running backs it is that knocked the ball out of Milroe's hand. That was so funny. The third turnover where he just it's like, I'm going to take the ball all the way up here. It was so good.
He was really selling the fake as hard as he could. That's what he was doing. But
and the way that they iced the game with the pick six, they did it without Tyron Hopper. Just a really, really impressive performance. I remember the beginning of the year when we were talking about, man, has this defense regressed? It feels like an eternity ago because of how well they've been playing and how well they played last night.
I mean, I think it was fair for us to question because we just didn't see those big havoc-y plays. There weren't a lot of tackles for loss. There weren't a lot of sacks. There wasn't as much swatting away passes, which is picked up recently. But like, there are ways to play defense, and at its core, the game is about blocking and tackling. And on offense, you can block your guy to not have him tackle the ball carrier, you win. And on defense, if you get through your blocks and tackle the ball carrier, you win. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't like on the field. It's just you got to do it. And for a long time, Missouri was missing on the havoc plays, and they were very inaccurate in their tackles. And you're like, okay, do we stink again? Is this what's happening? But they're just competent. They flood the pass lanes. They don't give you anything easy. They create pressure. They don't create sacks, but they create pressure. They bottle up the run. You do not get very far. If you get a big play, you're not also going very far. It's competent defense. And it's so much different than what we're used to with Blake Baker. And blitz, boom, boom. He's just got a good set of dudes. And part of that strength, to your point, is that depth. You can have Realis George get out, have Jaden Jernigan come in, and there's no drop off. Right. That's how Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Texas and Ohio State, they win because they just rotate numerous 4 and 5 star guys in and there's no drop off. Well, you can do the same with 3 and 4 star kids. If your scheme is strong and they know their role and just do their job, you can do that. So that rotation is that strength, and maybe nobody stands out, but everybody's doing it. And it was death by 1,000 paper cuts. It was just poking. And eventually you ran out of time. You couldn't do anything. And so it wasn't like some big, flashy, like you had a sack, you had a few TFLs, but like it wasn't flashy defense. It was just competent defense. And because it's so much different than last year, sometimes it makes you stop and think and go, oh, is it bad? No, it's very good. It's just really good at the fundamentals.
Yeah. And I think last night too, talking about all these guys that you can rotate in and out, these big dudes, these tackles on the line, it's a real credit to their work on the recruiting trail, especially through the transfer portal. I mean, 4 of the top 5 guys in that tackle on the line are transfers. George, Landry, Williams, Jernigan, all guys that they were able to pick through the transfer portal. So I've been on the horse of like, we really need to be giving Drinkwitz credit because this is like the building he's done is finally like culminating in the payoff this year. But I mean, you talk about building depth the way that Alabama and Georgia do. 10 years ago, you'd have to wait to do it. But credit to Drinkwitz and Baker, they've been able to do it fairly quickly by finding these guys that may not be the all SEC, the NFL draft picks, but they're going to come in, they're going to do a job, and they're going to do it solidly. And you really have to give them credit for identifying those players.
Yeah. Part of building a college football team is having an identity and having a scheme. And, we all thought we knew the Blake Baker scheme, but apparently he can mix it up. So finding smart players through the portal, we always give credit for Eli Drinkwitz and his staff for their ability to bring in 5-star, 4-star kids way, way better at a higher rate than any regime prior. But I think their most impressive work is through the portal. I think when BK and I talk about this, if I remember correctly, there's been like maybe 2 busts, like Ian Matthews, who transferred away from Mizzou after transferring here from Auburn, and Benzie Polgar, who's just kind of like this nebulous, we don't know why he's not playing. That's really it. Everybody else they've brought in through the portal has played, has started, has made a positive impact. They're really good at this. And I don't know if it's because of the scheme or it's just a staff that knows their stuff, but they have been finding the inefficiencies and closing the gap by maximizing portal acquisitions as well as accruing blue chip talent through high school recruiting. And finally, you have an offense that can match the productivity of the defense. And voila, we have our magical 2023 team that we've always circled as the breakthrough. But I feel like they've done it in a way that we just did not anticipate.
Yeah, there's something that I kind of want to highlight is in the way that they've built this roster and they built this team, and Drinkwitz has really built this program. I mean, I feel like we've started to overlook it a little bit just because it's been the mantra all year. It's been something to prove, right? STP hashtag. It's always that. And they talked last night, I thought really well about how that's like the motto of the season, but then every week has its own week, and 4 quarters of hell was last night. And it certainly was 4 quarters of hell for Tennessee. I think there's a bigger conversation that we can have. It's not like super in depth, but Missouri is, given the past success that they've had, right? They're never going to be like one of those blue chip programs, at least in any conceivable way that I can think of in my mind. But they are a program that when they're going, they're like right on the higher tier teams that aren't going to be blue chips. And we're entering a year next year with the college football playoff expanding. I can't believe it didn't happen this year, but
I know.
Where Mizzou is a really attractive destination for players who are like, you know what, I could go to Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, but like if I can't quite go there, if I know I'm not the priority there, I know I can make it work at Mizzou. They're a good SEC program. They're on the right track. There's a real benefit to those guys coming here. And I think what we've learned through 10 years in the SEC is that Mizzou will never be considered part of the SEC, no matter what, even given how nebulous like these things are. I'm sure Oklahoma and Texas won't have as hard of a time finding acceptance. So like, I don't know if something to prove then becomes the mantra of the program,
Sure.
but it always seems like Mizzou is going to have something to prove. And I don't know if it's like something you throw on a wall before you walk out onto the field that everybody can tap, kind of like the Liverpool thing. But it just does seem like you could expand that beyond this season, right? You don't have to hit it because then you get into that Barry Odom thing where nobody believes in us. We're always like fighting from like, but at the same time, I do think Eli Drinkwitz has smartly tapped into something a little more foundational as to like who Missouri is as a program. Mizzou is always going to have to prove themselves to people. You can get in the comments last night where people were like, "Oh, we own the state of Tennessee," and Tennessee fans are like, "Well, you're 1-3 against us in the last 4 years." I'm like, what does that matter in the face of your teeth getting kicked in on national television?
Yeah.
I really do think that this something to prove mantra is really indicative of who Mizzou is as a program. And credit to Eli Drinkwitz for identifying that, because I think it really resonates with his guys. And when he's done such a good job of recruiting people who are so familiar with who Mizzou is in the context of the national scene, I think it really resonates. And it seems to resonate with the fans. And look, Mizzou might finish this year 10-2, 11-2. They're going to come into next year and they lost a lot of pieces. They're not going to be as good this year. Drinkwitz can't do it again. There's always going to be something to prove for Mizzou. So it doesn't have to be the hashtag every year, but I think it can be like something that we as a program and we as a fan base embrace moving forward. And you don't want to overdo it, but I just think it's really smart, and it seems to have really motivated this team in this year specifically.
You got a team full of transfers. That's really easy to say, hey, you weren't wanted, or you weren't good enough to play for that team. That's what they told you. So you got something to prove it over here.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't work as well for high school recruiting, but still when you're doing transfer portal shopping, you're plugging in holes to help you make an immediate impact. And guess what? The college football world at large is not going to pay attention to Missouri. And that's the fun part. The reason why I felt so confident about this team coming in is because we did pay attention. We saw what they were doing. We saw how he improved the defense in 1 year, which is making a good hire. We saw the pieces be good, but just couldn't put it together on offense. You needed someone to take over and just have a fresh play calling. You saw that you had all these rising talents that, were young last year, and we're going through their first round of SEC, and then they're coming back for their second round, and the rest of the SEC was lacking experience or quarterbacks. And it was really easy if you were paying attention to say, this is going to be a good year. But guess what? No one else pays attention to Missouri. That's just our lot in life. And I'm fine with that. I think it's better to be that way. I like to sneak up and surprise people. But yeah, it's something to prove. If that is just Missouri's mantra, the show me state, something to prove, sure, do it.
It does line up with the show me state as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if that's what's going to motivate, the athletes that come to Mizzou, then do it. Yeah. And then have your little subcategory motivational ploys. But yeah, college guys are dumb. It's really easy to get them riled up. Find something to tap into their inner wolf and let the dogs go. So
there's always going to be bulletin board material.
Oh, for sure. So yeah, it's been a great year. There's no doubt about that. They could lose. We don't want to. You could lose every game going forward and still be a good year. You still had your moments. But
first they didn't. I'm going to say
also
that. Also
would
on the
agree
record about that.
Yeah, also would agree with that. But I don't know. All the ingredients were there to have a special year, and so far it is culminated that. And oh my God, we should have beaten Georgia. If that was at home, that would have been whatever.
Nate, can I ask you a question? Do you know where it hasn't been a good year?
What's that?
It hasn't been a good year at Texas A&M.
dude, man.
Can you imagine being paid $75 million to be told you don't work here anymore?
That's a good gig if you can get it.
Insanity.
Yeah.
Go away. Here's a line of Brinks trucks. Do with them what you will. Just don't come back.
That you got to be a special level of deplorable to be paid $75 million to go away, or be dealing with a certain type of crazy to not only say that will happen, but then follow through.
Mm-hmm.
I know the language and how the money gets paid out is a little. It's not 75 million today. I can tell you that it's amortized over an extended period of time, and obviously, when you got oil money, you're doing just fine. But yeah. And not only get paid $75 million to no longer do your job, but do so after having a pretty good day at the office.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know it was Mississippi State, but you won by like 30 points. And
41, I believe. Wasn't it 51 to 10? They were really hurting on them.
I stopped keeping track once they got over 30. I was like, whatever. So, yeah, you had a pretty good day at the office. You just beat a conference opponent by over 40 points, and then you get fired. I've seen a lot of people ask, why now? Guys, because they wanted to.
Yeah.
Right. When you have money, you get to do what you want. That's how this country works. If you don't have money, you just deal with it. If you do, then you get to call the shots. This is America. So they have the money, and they didn't want to deal with him anymore. And they didn't want to risk him becoming, bowl eligible or going on a little run to close out the season and being stuck with him for another year. So they just did it. And they did it today. And they're doing it so that the Israeli-Hamas war doesn't make oil futures tank in the future, and they don't have the money anymore. They decided to do it now. So this is where we're at. And, Jimbo Fisher, I don't know if he's going to buy Twitter or, own
he
a
probably
little
could
island.
At this point. The net worth is pretty low. I think he could get a good share.
Man, or just buy one of those, castles that the Russians had seized from them from the West, and just put a pellet grill out front and just, say, this is my country now. I'm Jimbo Fisher. This is my country now. I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to have a great life, and I hope he never works another day in his life, because that's what I would do. But obviously there's a coaching position open, a head coach position open at a place that is crazy and has a lot of money. And so when head coaching positions open up, I feel like every fan base in the country thinks one of two things. Number one, oh, my coach is really good. They're going to take him away. Or number two, oh, I hate my coach. I hope they take him away. So, this is prime time. This is the coaching carousel silly season. There's a list that's put out. I think Pete Tham will put it out. Ignore it. Because how this works is that a coaching position opens, and any agent worth their salt with a client who's having a good year calls up their beat writer, national beat writer of choice, and say, hey, put my guy's name in that list. Put him on there. I don't care. 6th, 7th, whatever. Just put it on there. Then Pete Thamel goes, okay, because I like to have that connection and have that inside reporting. He then puts it out. Then that agent turns and goes to the representatives in the school and says, oh, yeah, you see that? Our boy's in line for Texas A&M. What are you going to do to keep him around? What are you going to do? Thus begins the negotiation process. So those opening lists, they're nothing. They're just talking points. It's to continue the silly season. However, Missouri fans, your coach is pretty good this year. He just took Missouri to a potential 11-win season, beat the tar out of Tennessee on national TV, has improved recruiting, has made good assistant hires, and he's done it all at Missouri.
He's I think one thing to note there too, he's getting investment into the program. The people are investing in the program now, which I don't think should be overlooked when you talk about a school with resources like Texas A&M.
Yeah, he also likes to run his mouth, which Texas A&M loves to do as well.
It's true.
There's potential little brother energy from Texas A&M. Anyway, so is there a danger that Eli Drinkwitz gets poached by Texas A&M, who offers him $1 billion over 20 years with all of it guaranteed? Sure, it's possible. I also know that Texas A&M, when they take coaches, they take national championship winning coaches. So you're more in danger of an Urban Meyer coming back to college football or a Dabo Swinney getting plucked out from Clemson, who doesn't respect him anymore, and going to College Station. That's more of a move that they tend to make. There's also a coaching opening in Boise, Idaho, as Andy Avalos was let go this morning as well. That one I'm a little more concerned about. And I'm not saying that I am, but I'm saying are you more concerned about Eli Drinkwitz going to A&M or Kirby Moore going to Boise? I'm going to go more Kirby to Boise. And the reason for that is because, number one, he apparently loves the West Coast, which Missouri is famously not the West Coast. Okay. There's a lifestyle. There's just a way of being out there that you're not going to get replicated in Columbia. As much as I love Columbia, you're not going to replicate it. Boise tends to hire alum, right? When Chris Peterson left, they went with Chris Peterson's offensive coordinator. When Brian Harsin left, they went with Brian Harsin's defensive coordinator. Now that Andy Avalos is gone, it's like, hey, let's get a Boise receivers coach back in here. It could happen. I also know that Boise cannot spend as much as Missouri does. So maybe if Kirby Moore doesn't have 750,000 reasons to stay in Columbia, maybe he gets 900,000 reasons to stay in Columbia, or 1 million reasons to stay. I don't know. I'm not concerned about either one at this point, Kirby or Eli leaving, but it's out there. Josh, how are you feeling about this whole situation that is currently like 3 hours old?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned kind of all of these initial lists that come out. I do think it's notable that of all the lists that I've scanned, and they're not an insignificant amount, especially in the Texas A&M situation, I haven't really seen any of Mizzou's coaches named. I know Bruce Feldman put up a piece on The Athletic list. He said, I talked to some insiders about who Texas A&M is looking at, and Eli Drinkwitz is not on that list. Obviously, I mean, A&M is, I think if I had to put like percentages on it, it's probably like 5% worry that Drinkwitz would go to A&M, maybe more like 20% that Kirby Moore would go to Boise State, just because of the strong connection there. I also think it's worth pointing out that there are there's one specific alum that Boise State could hire away from from an NFL franchise who also has a connection to Boise State. I'm talking about Kirby's older brother, Kellen. To me, I would think that I actually don't know if the Moore brothers would want to go back to Boise State at this point. I mean, if you look at it, Kirby Moore has had 1 year of running a high major offense. And to his credit, he has been amazing. I don't want him going anywhere. And Mizzou has had a very recent track record of locking new guys down, especially when they have such drastic improvement on there. Boise State's that's not like an also ran program. Like they're going to want someone that they think can win. So do they want a Kirby Moore? I mean, he wouldn't be the worst hire in my opinion, but there are other guys that they could bring in, including Kellen, that I think would probably have a little bit more of a pedigree. I do think that maybe Kirby Moore might be destined for there in the future, maybe after this next cycle goes through with Boise State. Sure. But hopefully at that point, he's done such a good job that someone else has poached him and paid a lot of money. And but, I don't think I'm overly worried about either. I do think my preferred scenario would be that either Bobby Petrino impresses in a few games and Texas A&M decides to keep him around, which would be very Texas A&M.
Very funny. Very funny.
But also, I mean, fingers crossed, Lance Leopold is out there. Texas A&M could. I mean, that's actually not the worst thing. Oklahoma, Texas coming into the SEC. A&M is going to want a guy who knows how to play against those programs and beat those programs. He wouldn't be the worst hire. It'd be a smart hire, I think, which I don't know that A&M's particularly predisposed to smart hires.
That's not their brand. That's not their brand.
Yeah. No. So I don't know. I don't really think either one of them is in danger. I do think we'll probably see a raise for Kirby Moore at some point in the next few months.
I think
that's probably on the table, but I'm not overly concerned about either. But if I had to put one on it, it'd probably be more to Boise State.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that Boise likes to hire guys who already have, the key card to the garage. Like Kirby doesn't. Now, not that he can't get it, not that he's not that he's unfamiliar with it, but like it's like, oh, we got to get him a security badge. You know what? Screw it. Let's just get the guy who's already here. So if that is true, and I don't know if that is, that just might be a total coincidence, but we'll see. I do think A&M right now. I have seen reporting like from real ass reporters saying a lot of Texas A&M's boosters realized about a year and a half ago that, maybe Jimbo's success was due to two things. Number one, Jameis Winston being his quarterback for 2 years. And number two, Mike Elko being his DC for 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, you're not bringing in Jameis Winston to play quarterback, but you can bring in Mike Elko to be a coach. So I think they are kind of looking Elko's way. I don't know if that dude wants to go back. Like he seems to be living great out in Durham, but also Mani, hello. I mean, $75 million, your great grandkids are not going to have to work a day in their life. So like it's beyond generational changing money. And again, he knows College Station pretty well. So that I'm assuming that's where they're going to look first, but we will see.
There's another Florida State coach out there that could be open to moving. I mean, Mike Norvell, hell of a job. Well, just if the one thing didn't work, just try it again. It'll work the second time, I promise. Let's go get Florida State's coach.
Oh, that'd be wild. That'd be wild. Camden Rusk, do you think Mizzou has elevated as a program / coaching destination due to NIL laws or other factors? Camden, I can tell you right now that Eli is very impressed with the NIL buy-in from the community. Like he wanted it and he got more than he anticipated. So that is rare. You're not going to see a lot of college programs have the ability to pull so much. And I'm not talking like dollar figure. I'm talking like number of contributors to the kitty, right? Like it's the 1P5 college in the state, Yes, you could look at Missouri State. Yes, you can look at Lindenwood. Yes, you could look at, whatever. But all the NIL effort and all of the interesting, fun, unique offers are going to Missouri. So it has absolutely elevated Missouri's stance, not across the board and not for every single coach, but I know Eli was really struggling to get funding and support and he got it. And now that he's got it, he's very happy. We know that part. So I do think the destination is a little bit more attractive than it was 2-3 years ago. Obviously it's not going to keep everybody, but it's certainly making the current staff very pleased. Yeah, and Glowman Mike, you hope Mizzou can afford to keep its coordinators. Yeah, they will. Like, yes, absolutely. They seem to be able to manage their money very well. And when you have a good season like this, obviously there's going to be a couple of assistants that are going to come up and say, hey, how do you feel about me from a monetary standpoint since we did so well? So there's going to be raises. There's going to be renegotiation of contracts. And I have full confidence that Missouri's not going to lose a guy because we couldn't afford him. Except for like if A&M throws $3 million at an offensive line coach. That's when I'd go, yeah, we're going to lose out. From a realistic standpoint, we're not going to lose out on money. So
yeah, there's always a little bit of shuffling here and there, but I think with where Missouri's at as a program, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, but with the college football playoff extending to 12 next year, Missouri is one of those programs that could have a realistic shot, not infrequently, of being a part of that conversation. If it was 12 teams this year, they would be firmly in that conversation. Mm-hmm. So that, especially, I think, along with all the NIL investment that the state has put into has put into NIL, I think Mizzou is an attractive destination, especially for young and upcoming coaches that want to prove their stuff at the highest level and then want to be like the centrally located school to be able to get that investment. I think there are a lot of factors going into it. I think Mizzou is a program on the rise, which I think everybody is happy to be a part of.
Yeah, and credit to Desiree Reed-Francois for being able to do that, both football, basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, everything. Like she has been the linchpin to get a lot of things pulling in the same direction. I'm just going to say this because I know BK would say it if he was here and he's not here. If you do lose a coach to a position that's better, or at least at the same or a similar peer stance, That is a good thing.
Yeah.
That is telling coaches, hey, you know what? If you do well here, you can continue to do well somewhere else. And if that is somebody's goal to work their way through the ranks and up, this is a good place to do it. And you want those types of coaches. You want those gunner coaches. You don't want a full staff of them, but you want the ones who are going to go all out and make you better and be in high demand. And you want them to come here because they're going to make your program better for 2-3 years, whatever, such like that. So it is all good. And yes, for the extended playoff, you know how in baseball, like with the SEC, it's harder to make the SEC championship in baseball than it is to make the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we're going to be starting next year, because not only do you live in a conference with Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, LSU, Georgia, A&M. Not only do you do that, but there's no longer divisions. So instead of being the best team out of 6 or 7, you now have to be like one of the 2 best out of 16. You don't get to just, have a lucky day against Georgia and then ride the rest the way for the rest of the season and then get in automatically. You have to be one of the 2 best teams in the conference to go to the conference championship game. Now, the positive of that is that, hey, guess what? Georgia doesn't just get to play an East schedule every single year. They are going to play Alabama, Texas, LSU, the West in general more frequently than they currently do. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of give and take, and the same for the West teams playing the East teams and all that stuff. But it is going to be demonstrably harder to be in the SEC championship and somehow easier to make it into the post-game playoff championship series. So we've got that going for us. And yeah, why not Mizzou? You're in the SEC. If you get it through with 2 losses, everyone's going to view you very favorably. And Missouri just showed that they can do that. So it's I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but sitting here, November 12th, 2023, I feel pretty good about Missouri's chances to make it in the playoff a couple of times in the next 10, 15 years.
Same. Yeah, I second everything you said. I think where college football is headed, I think Mizzou is a program like primed to take full advantage of that. I mean, of course, we're going to see a lot of the bigger programs that we've seen make the college football playoff again and again and again. But I think programs like Mizzou are really going to benefit because, I mean, Mizzou is every decade, Mizzou has 2 or 3 years where they're a legitimate top 15 program. And hey, you're a legitimate top 15 program. You're going to the college football playoff starting next year. So
absolutely. I saw that they're 11th in the coaches poll. I haven't seen the AP, but you got to realize, Ole Miss lost, Penn State lost, USC was not ranked. Utah lost.
Oklahoma State lost.
Over. That's right. Oklahoma State lost.
That's a big one for Mizzou.
So top 10?
Maybe we'll see.
Tennessee lost, obviously.
Yeah, well, Tennessee was above them. So I mean, it's reasonable, I think. And I think the thing going full circle here, the way that they not only beat Tennessee but like throttled them, it was a beatdown. And I think that matters to people. And they're like, man, you just kicked Tennessee's ass, man. That matters.
And your coach said it on TV too. It was great.
Yeah.
And apparently Tennessee is such loserish behavior, as RSH 140.6 says. Tennessee fans are complaining about the turf at Faroe Field. Why? That's loser behavior. You're talking about the grass? Yeah. To your point, the dome, that was concrete with hair. Okay. I've been on Faroe Field. It's not cushy, but it's pretty forgiving. It's not bad. I know there was a lot of injuries on both sides. I don't think that was because of the grass. God, they are such losers. I hate that.
They don't know how to lose, man. They need to watch more Bluey.
Pass the parcel. Come on, bingo. Man. What is your favorite Bluey episode, by the way, since we're here?
Oh yeah. We're an hour, we're over an hour into this. Sleepy Time, man. Sleepy Time is the goated Bluey episode.
Which one is that? Is that when
that's the one where Bingo falls asleep and most of the episode takes place in her dream?
That's right.
Goated. Although I'm really becoming a fan of bandit centric episodes now because I feel in my soul like Bandit sometimes. I wish that when I walked into a room, people would say, "It's Dad," and would start clapping. So,
Oh man. Yeah. Look, I'm never going to amount to a cartoon dog's ability to be a dad. Like I've resigned myself to that. But he is pretty great. It's funny because I love Sleepy Time. I also love Fruit Bat when they talk about being nocturnal.
yes.
And Bluey has the dream that she's a fruit bat, and Bandit's having a dream that he's playing. What is he playing? Aussie rules football, rugby, something like that. And it's just like, hey, Dad, thanks for taking care of us instead of doing what you want to do. I'm like, oh yeah, man, dang that. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. So Bluey is elite.
The viewership numbers are skyrocketing right now.
They really are. I mean, God, man, I went on a bachelor party a couple of years ago, and in the downtime between one shenanigan and the other, we watched Bluey for about an hour and a half. So it's elite television.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's enough to talk about as far as what's Camden Ross saying, beclowning, the Tennessee beclowning themselves. That's tremendous. Missouri won. Cody Schrader is awesome. Blake Baker and his defense are great. And your Tigers are 8-2 with a reeling 3-loss Florida coming to town for senior day. And then whatever the heck is happening in Arkansas, I don't even know.
Well, Mizzou, if they want to be like hospitable guests, what they'll do is they'll bring a suite of Christmas DVDs for Arkansas's players to watch at halftime. They've already watched Polar Express, so we can't bring that one. So, I mean, we can bring them like The Family Stone, Love Actually, just anything to keep them occupied.
Love Actually
as they're getting beat down. They can watch movies at halftime, and we'll take the win, and we'll go to a New Year's Six Bowl. That sounds pretty good to me.
If you don't know, there was a video that leaked last night of Arkansas players watching Polar Express during halftime. I don't know why either. I didn't ask. I didn't have the opportunity to ask. Also, I feel like that's a very mid-level holiday film, like you said. It's very uncanny valley. I don't like watching it. It makes me upset visually to watch it. So that is not one that we frequent. But yeah, I don't know. You can't go wrong with the classic How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It's quick. You can get it done in halftime. And it's a classic, You got some.
I wonder if that guy missed the second half because he was like, I have to finish the movie.
But where does it go? Where does the train go? I got to find out.
Hold on, Sam. I've got things to do.
Oh, God. So, yeah. Hey, credit to your Tigers. They're great. Josh, any final thoughts before we get the heck out of here?
No, man. I appreciate you having me on as always. God, this team is really fun to write about, to watch, to talk about. Everybody enjoy it these next few weeks. I don't want to say that the road gets easier from here. Florida is weird and inconsistent. Arkansas, that's a rivalry game, so of course it's probably going to be close. But I mean, last night represented to me, in my opinion, the biggest test of the last quarter of the season. And man, if Mizzou plays like that the next 2 weeks, they are not losing to Florida or Arkansas. So fingers crossed that they've still got more in the tank but it looks like they do. So
yeah, and we'll talk all about it at Rock M Nation. BK will be back in midweek to talk about Florida. We will be giving plenty of articles and breakdowns on what that's going to look like. But that is going to be our live show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Do it. Pow. We're on YouTube. Leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Nate G. Edwards. You are at Josh Matejka, if I remember correctly.
Nailed it.
It's also there, right? Just look at the screen. And of course, you can follow the Rock M flagship at Rock M Nation and the podcasting outlet at Rock M Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
COU.